From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole.
In the last few minutes, US President Donald Trump has announced sweeping tariffs on goods imported into the United States.
Economists expect to see prices on things like used cars, airfares, and car insurance go up.
Beijing striking back today with a 125% tariff on all U.S. goods sold in China.
When people speculate about fallout from President Trump's threatened tariffs, they often talk about how tariffs on steel could drive up car prices, or how tariffs on certain food products or wines will drive up prices at the store. But tariffs are hitting some small businesses in Colorado especially hard. Think about the price of a stand-up paddleboard or a ski jacket almost doubling. And some companies that sell Colorado-made products in other countries are canceling orders altogether. Jason Blevins is a reporter for the Colorado Sun. He spoke recently with the owners of several small outdoor companies in Colorado about how the tariffs are hitting their bottom line and how they'll try to cope in the coming months.
Overall, the outdoor recreation industry in Colorado contributes somewhere around $14 billion a year to the state economy, employs some 130,000 workers. That's sizable.
Yeah.
And it's sort of our signature industry, right? And some of these small mountain communities, rural communities, these smaller outdoor recreation businesses, you know, driven and owned by innovative, passionate, outdoors type of people, they have an oversized impact, right? Like they employ even just a small company. It's 10 people, you know, in a town of 2,000, that's a big deal. And everybody, is a little concerned watching how the uncertainty around these tariffs could impact these rural economies and these small businesses.
Now, you spoke with Mike Harvey, who runs a company called Badfish that makes inflatable stand-up paddleboards in Salida. He's been waiting on a shipment of a board that he recently redesigned and had manufactured in China. The boards are still coming, but with a pretty significant tariff slapped on. How is this affecting his business?
Mike called it a margin killer. He founded Badfish 2010 in Salida, kind of pioneering this whole new sport of river stand-up paddling. And if you go down there to Salida, you see all those folks surfing in that really cool surf wave they have there on the Arkansas River in downtown.
Yeah.
A large number of those surfers are on Badfish surfboards. Mike and his partner Zach have created these really innovative boards. He had several, new designs in this shipping container that was coming over, and it sort of left China or Asia as these tariffs landed, and he's looking at something along the lines of 155% tariff possibly on these by the time they land in port. So he's struggling on, what are our options here? And Mike said, all his choices are bad.
Yeah.
He's either going to lose a lot of money or transfer the cost to the customers or have some painful combination of both. And Mike's been making those boards over in Asia for a number of years. They use a unique drop stitch type of design that's just not done here.
Yeah.
And it can only be done in these factories in China and Vietnam.
Well, let's talk bikes. For some of us who are not in the manufacturing business, it's tough to understand why it's not as simple as just saying, just take what you're building overseas and do it here. It sounds like it's a very lengthy process. You interviewed Chris Conroy, who owns a small bicycle company in Golden called Yeti Cycles. They used to do some manufacturing domestically some years ago, but they had to move production overseas. What drove their decision to do that?
Most of their suppliers, their carbon fiber layup, their handlebars, their metal, their screws, all the little bolts and everything, were coming from Asia. So it had made sense for them to make their bikes over there. They were one of the last domestic manufacturers of high-end mountain bikes in the U.S. They eventually, when all their suppliers and all the other accessory makers, Easton and all the different bike part makers moved overseas, it became cost prohibitive to have production here. So they moved everything over there.
Sure. So how is Yeti Cycles preparing for the consequences of tariffs, and what do those consequences look like?
Yeti's employs about 75 at the Golden facility there, and they make some of the best mountain bikes in the world, and they are in a holding pattern. We talk a lot about the outdoor industry and overseas manufacturing, and it's a very complicated supply chain based on demand, and some of these processes and timelines are spread out over a year or two. So here we are coming into spring and summer 2025, and a lot of outdoor manufacturers like Chris are going to the bike retailers and say, what do you want for next summer? And those bike retailers obviously are saying, dude, we don't know what's going to happen this summer. How can we place an order for next summer? And so it's a complicated, interwoven global production, supply and demand chain that is being disrupted with, uncertainty right now. And that's really the whole gist of this, is the uncertainty around all this for a process that takes a year, longer in some cases, is really challenging these guys.
Yeah. I want to ask you a bike adjacent question, because you also spoke with Lane Wilson, the owner of a small company in Salida that makes bike packing bags. These are soft bags that attach to your bicycle that can hold gear for camping trips. She told you almost all the materials they use in making their products are made in the U.S. already. Yet her business is still being hit. She had to lay off 7 people. How exactly are tariffs or the tariff uncertainty affecting her small business?
Yeah, Lane Wilson, she's the founder of Oveja Negra. They make incredible bike bags. So things will last forever. She did have to shut down, for about 13-year-old business, and she's been growing at 10% a year. Lots of international retailers, very popular bike bags in Europe and Africa and South America, all over Canada. And even though she has all these U.S. manufacturers, she makes all her stuff there in Salida. She sews it there. She's trained all her workers there. She uses domestic made materials, and that she figured out production. She's finding out a number of international bike shops are like, we're not buying goods from the U.S. We're not happy with you.
Sure.
So Canadian shops and European shops are like, there's a bit of a stigma around U.S. made products on the international scene right now. And that's what she's seeing is, bike shops saying, hey, we're not super keen to carry a U.S. made product, even if it's awesome.
Well, some of these businesses are smaller than you might think. Lane's business, for example, employs about a dozen workers. Does that make these businesses more nimble than large companies with something like this, or are they more vulnerable to the shock?
I think a little bit of both. Yes, they can sort of juke and jive around a lot of uncertainty and issues. But again, it kind of just goes back to this uncertainty. The big guys and the little guys just don't know what's coming.
Jason Blevins covers the outdoors for the Colorado Sun. He did mention one potential silver lining to this situation. If tariffs continue to spike the prices of new outdoor gear, Colorado could see growth for businesses that refurbish and resell used gear. He said while the idea isn't new, this could be the moment when selling secondhand gear becomes a sustainable business model. We'll put a link to Jason's story in the Colorado Sun, as well as more coverage of tariffs and the outdoor industry from our colleague Rachel Cohen with the Mountain West News Bureau in our show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.